Welcome back to Daytime. I'm Robin Ray, and with me, Harvey Glatt. How does it feel to be back in the Shea 106 studio?
Well, I come here occasionally, maybe not often enough, but very, very special feelings and memories that always come back.
Absolutely. So we're going to go way back now. Take us back to 1977. That's the year that Shea started, and you started it all. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, in the mid '70s, there were just a couple of popular AM stations in Ottawa, but AM wasn't generally very popular. Not too many people had FM radios, and it was just around that time that the CRTC, the governing body for communications, opened up for license applications for FM, and there weren't too many people interested. We applied for a music station, and somebody from Montreal applied for a music station. There were just two of us, and at that time there was also an application for a news network station. Um, I had help from a friend who had worked at Chum FM in Toronto, which was an early eclectic station, and he helped guide me and a few of my friends through the process of the license application. And we got lucky. There were CRTC hearings, and we proposed what was then a very eclectic station. You wouldn't call it classic rock, although a lot of classic rock was becoming quite popular then. Shome FM existed in Montreal, and that was one clue that it would work in Ottawa, because at that time we found out that about 60,000 people were tuning into Shome FM via Rogers Cable at the time. And it was a sign that something was happening. And we saw it happening with other stations in Toronto, with Chum FM and WNEW FM in New York. Um, and our company was active in presenting concerts of, what you would call classic rock in those days. And it wasn't getting any airplay, but we knew there was quite an audience for it.
Yeah. Any memorable concerts that you brought here? Any memorable names that you could mention?
Well, somebody today was reminding me that we brought a group called Yes, and I don't know how many people know about Yes. It's interesting that um, if you talk to young people today about some of what happened then, but um, we in the early years I brought in the Rolling Stones and Beach Boys and um,
How about Joni Mitchell? Is that one familiar?
Joni Mitchell. I was involved in a coffee house, and Joni Mitchell was Joni Anderson,
Right.
and in the early years, in the '60s, we brought Joni Anderson, who became Joni Mitchell later on. She was brilliant. She wasn't singing in tune so much in those days, but she became a much better singer later on. Gordon Lightfoot. In the beginning, Shea was quite a mixed bag. There was what you'd call classic rock, but we were also playing pop like Elton John, and we also had special programs like a guy named Brian Murphy, who was early with us, did blues and jazz programming. And we would mix in folk, and sometimes you'd hear classical, and we had a lot of Quebecois music in those days. Before she became a big pop singer, Celine Dion was quite a popular Quebecois singer. We actually played some Celine Dion. Another name that comes back to me is a group called La Belle et la Bête. Um, there were some Ontario kind of francophone rock groups that we would play. So we were mixing in French music. We weren't talking French language, but we were, in a sense, copying some of what Shome did, and it went over quite well. Later on, Shea evolved into more of pure classic rock, but For the late 70s, early 80s, were very eclectic. A guy named Ken Rockburn um, was he wasn't a news director, but active in the news department, and he eventually had a program called Medium Rare. Another thing that was a mix of music and interviews with people. Another thing that we did, we had a lot of talk on air in those days, and many well-known authors like could be Irving Layton, even Conrad Black came in to do interviews in those days.
So tell us what you're most proud of when it comes to CHEZ back then and what it's turned into now as a radio station. What are you most proud of?
Well, I run into people frequently. I'll meet them on a plane. I'll meet them on the street. I'll say, "You're Harvey Glatt," and thank you very. They thank me for introducing them to a lot of music and other arts things, because we were promoting more than just music. As I mentioned, we were promoting authors, and we would interview dance companies, and it was quite an interesting mix of various kinds of arts. And I'm very proud of the fact that, well, that's the gratification. My whole thing is about sharing what I like and what I believe in with other people, and if it affects them, then I feel that I've done right.
Perfect. Well, we are really glad that we could have you here today. Thank you very much for being here and speaking a little bit more about CHEZ.